So anyhow, let's see. So what we ended up, I got to get closed captionings. There we go. Okay. So anyhow, I read through the Padlets. They look excellent. You guys are doing exactly what you're supposed to do. There are a couple of anonymous Padlets out there, so please go back in and you can edit your post, so you can add your name in there. That's fine. And again, don't forget to also go into Blackboard and answer that little survey question about whether the degree of helpful that you found the Padlets to be. And then I also saw several of you had gone through and posted under multiple, even all of the Padlets, which I certainly appreciate and definitely recommend that you do. So let's see. Okay, cool, Jade. Excellent. Yep, and thank you, Lori. I'm slow on the chat, so I appreciate you guys jumping in when your peers ask questions. Um, so so anyhow, excellent work on the Padlets. Keep it up. And again, they're all there for the entire semester, so you could certainly work ahead. I'll be opening, since you guys are working at a pretty good pace, I think this weekend I'm going to go ahead and open at least the next module, and maybe even, I don't want to intimidate any. Some students get intimidated when you put the whole shebang out there, the whole semester's worth of body of work. So I kind of easing you in, but I'll probably open module 2 this weekend. So anyway, Padlet's looking good. I do a couple anonymouses. Please fix those. And again, don't forget to do the little Blackboard survey. Case study, I want to pull that up and look at a couple of items. I graded several of those today. I've started that process. So I at least two, maybe I think maybe 3 classes. There are 5 of you advanced classes. So I want to say 3 of them are done. The other 2 I'm working on. So you should, if you've submitted a case study 1 or even 2, I think one of you has done case study 2 as well. Those are graded, but I do want to pull that up and answer, give you guys a little bit of direction on the case study. We'll do that next. And then the Physiox, again, several of you have submitted those. I graded those, and I'm going to go through the Physiox, the first one, tonight, so we can see that. And then, of course, don't forget to do the exam. We're going to go through I'm going to do a little bit of lecturing tonight as well. That'll help you maybe with some of the exam preparation. Again, you're going to want to look at, I've got the Google Slides in there for nervous system is a part 1 and a part 2. So there are 2 slideshows for that. And then, of course, you can watch any videos too that I went through. So I think from last semester or last summer, but they go through a lot of that information as well. And of course, you have your exam review that you can look at. That's the questions from the test bank. Now, let's see, endocrine system next week. If we have a few things to talk about in regards to nervous system or the first competency, we can certainly do that. Let's see. Awesome. Yeah, I see all of you are putting your names in the chat. Good. I appreciate that. Gosh, I saw 13 unread messages. I was in panic mode for a quick second. But yeah, you guys are putting your names in. I appreciate that. So let me exit out of this slideshow for just a quick second. We're going to, again, the Padlets, you have the link to be able to do those in Blackboard. So, or it'll take you to the home page potentially. And then I think there are some direct links to get you there. And again, once you're in here, you want to hit the plus button at the bottom, and that will pull up the title, which many of you put your name as the title, which is perfectly fine. And then write something, just your thoughts. And again, you have plenty of other comments you can read through to get an idea kind of if you're struggling with what you should write. So those are the Padlets. And again, I put them all up there to associate with our competencies. So I do recommend that you view all of them each week. Again, you don't necessarily have to comment under all of them, but I do appreciate any comments that you have to put out there. Now, let's see. Let's look at this case study and go through a couple of things. I want to give you guys a little bit of direction. I'm not going to go through and answer the questions for you, but I do want to, as again, some of you have already done this. I don't want to spend a heck of a lot of time on it, but I do want to go through a couple of things. If you haven't done so already, here you go. Here's the case study. This may be the first chance or opportunity you've had to really look at it. So what we have are a couple of different parts. It's kind of a chronological study where we have, and again, these are going to be similar each week. So we've got Dr. Gorga. I think you're going to want to take this case. So we've got someone that is in the hospital, Carmen Moreno, and she's been complaining about headaches, continuous headaches for a month. So along with her headaches, her personality is changing. And again, pain, all of our patients are different. All of us are different. We handle pain differently, and certainly a 4-week long headache would make all of us quite moody, I would imagine, and maybe even a little bit personality off. So we take that into account. What degree of personality is change? Are we seeing changes? Is it forgetfulness? Is it mood swings? Is it depression where it wasn't there before, episodes of mania or manic, impulsive behavior, or is it just, are they just kind of expressing their themselves that they've got some sort of severe pain that's becoming chronic going on. So anyway, those are certainly things that we look at right away. We're going to ask some more questions. That's the thing too about the case studies. You'll notice, I mean, some of them you'll find are going to be extremely detailed. Others, kind of like this one, there's just a little bit of banter back and forth. You're not given a whole heck of a lot. Obviously, in a real situation, we would be, you guys are, as you're reading through these, are probably coming up with your own questions that you would want to ask, right? So anyhow, so that's good. That's the approach you want to take. So changes in personality, easily annoyed. Well, I'm sure I easily annoy my wife, but anyway, right? Anyway, she appears to be happy one moment, changes to an extreme solemn state shortly after. And then again, if that's abnormal, we definitely are interested in taking note of that. Psychological changes, any physical changes, locomotion, moving her extremities efficiently has also become difficult. We need to know that. So that's big news. Neurologic, is there a family, do we have, we don't know. She was adopted from Italy at the age of 2. So anyway, we've got a lot of items to go through and try to unwrap. So not given much there right off the bat. So let's look at the first one. I mean, you could pretty much write just about anything down there, right? From the information above, what do you think could be causing her headaches? I mean, mood swing. It could be a nutrient deficiency. It could be an enzyme issues. It could be something very, very simple. It could be something extremely complicated. And as we see, if you guys, those of you who've gone through this one, know that this one's. I probably am giving too much away before. Anyway, I'm not good at surprises. Anyway, what test do you think should be? So anyway, you could write a number of items in there for number one. What tests do you think they should perform? Well, I mean, if we're dealing with neurology right away, we'd maybe do some neurological tests, all right? Some basic diagnostics, an MRI or CT scan. We could, from there, we might be, that's expensive. So, a lot of times it's how are you going to pay today? So if she has the Platinum Premier, we're going to run her right through the MRI machine probably, right? But if she's on Medicaid or something, she might get a bag of, pharmacy bag full of ibuprofen and sent home. So, you know, there's a lot with that. So we definitely are going to have a whole bunch of things that we could do. We would definitely want something neurological. We could run some blood tests. We could see if there's any type of blood, see what her blood glucose levels are. Maybe she's got some extreme diabetes, like it just popped up. She's got some severe diabetes going on that nobody's aware of, and it's messing with her equilibrium. It's messing with all kinds. So your brain relies on glucose heavily. So, you know, we could just have a glucose problem. I mean, so anyway, those are some things we want to look at, and that's a pretty cheap test to run. So we could even just have her pee in a cup and maybe glean some info that way. But yeah, running her right into the MRI machine, we still maybe would, but that's gonna maybe come a little bit later. But anyway, you still would maybe include that. So anyway, we want to get another couple of doctors involved. This one's already turning into kind of a mess. So Parkinson's disease, one doctor says, and another one says, well, maybe Huntington's. Well, those are kind of opposites. But as we find out, they both have to do with dopamine, and one's too much, one's not enough. So maybe we've got a dopamine level, right? Issue, dopamine regulation. It could be one of the enzymes or the reuptake enzymes that's not functioning properly. So it could be any number of items. So they're thinking dopamine right away. So a little bit more about her. She's 62, Brooklyn, New York. Again, has 4 kids. She returned from a trip. She returned to New York from Florida. So then there it is, a warm freshwater lake. That piques the interest of one of the doctors, and the other one tells them to back up the wagons a little bit. Let's not get too jump ahead too far. So anyway, then it just basically is asking you a little bit about Huntington's. So you just Google Huntington's, YouTube Huntington's. Just you can find out with a quick search a little bit about Huntington's. Same with Parkinson's. I want some specific symptoms, general symptoms, anything you can provide from your research there. And then why could it be both, right? Why? So based on what you find for number 3 and number 4, you can check off some similarities. So that's what you're going to do for number 5, is what are some similarities that you found between Huntington's and Parkinson's? Okay, and then what types of tests? So how do we diagnose Parkinson's, and how do we diagnose Huntington's? So do them separately. So put Parkinson's and then how it's diagnosed, Huntington's, how it's diagnosed. Parkinson's is a little trickier. It's a lot more physical tests and some intake questions and behavior stuff, and but a lot of physical testing. Huntington's, there's a gene that we can run a test to see if that's been rearing its ugly head. So anyway, put what you find for those 2 regarding how we can properly diagnose them. And then lastly, for that section, what about the lakes? Why did that get one of the physicians going? So warm freshwater lakes. There's usually some iffy things in there. Now diagnostic table, by the way, in here, when we're in a thank you for bringing that up. I think Lori, you emailed me about that, and Kim asking about it too. The diagnostic table part, if I go over to the questions, the document with the questions, you're not going to see that in there. We do, when we are face to face, I have a diagnostic table up, and you guys would come up and fill stuff out, fill out the table as we go to see what we can conclude. But that's not necessary. You don't need to worry about anything with a diagnostic table. All right. So anyway, swimming in lakes. I think that was it. Let me look back in there. Yeah, exactly. Craig, it could be simple migraine. Could be food sensitivities. Maybe she developed allergies can develop over a long period of time, and they kind of latent, or they don't really rear their heads until you get to a point, and then all of a sudden something as simple as that you've been consuming your whole life all of a sudden becomes problematic, cause severe migraines. They've been linking migraines and food sensitivities for quite a while. I know MSG is one of them that some people have food sensitivities to. Certainly, could it be COVID-19? Absolutely, nowadays. So yeah, put that in there for number one. This case study was created before COVID-19. This case study is, I don't know, a couple of years, 3 or 4 years old, maybe. But yeah, nowadays that's certainly possible too. COVID checks a lot of boxes for headaches. We're seeing motor issues with certain folks. We're seeing it attack certain areas of the brain so yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first things today that they would probably check her for. It'd be an easy one, right? Sweat, yep, positive. So and furthermore, kind of they're finding this about with COVID as time goes on here. She could have had some sort of, like I said, like an allergy or some sort of chemical or hormonal or enzymatic issue, maybe a neurotransmitter issue that wasn't presenting itself at all. It was either latent or dormant. Latent kind of means dormant. And COVID coming in, they're finding can actually trigger some of these latent or dormant issues. And that's why there are so many different signs and symptoms that someone has COVID. Someone may have, they start getting horrible migraines all of a sudden. They've never had them before, and they're having some equilibrium issues. They're moody. They're like bipolar almost, and they never have been. Yeah, I mean the COVID could have triggered. Excellent. Yeah, we can definitely not rule that out as not just that she's positive and the COVID is causing this, but the COVID actually triggered what maybe was latent or dormant. So excellent. Oh yes, and so couple questions have come up in emails. I want to add. This is a good time to answer those. All right, so everyone is going to have access to this document. This is the case study questions. This is what you're going to submit, or something similar to this. You have access to this document. Now you can't type into it, right? It's uneditable. It's a read-only document. So again, what you're going to want to do other instructors at Gateway use Google Docs and Google Sheets and Google Slides, etc. And again, they'll give you access to read it, but not edit it. But that's fine, because you just have to go over to the file and then you can hit make a copy. So if I click make a copy, it'll give me the option to name it. So here you could put your name in front of there. So you could just go in here, hit Yoakum case study 1, hit OK, and it'll pop up a brand new document for you. Now this one is yours and it's editable at this point. And then that's what you're going to save. You can share it. You're going to want to if you do submit your Google Doc in Blackboard, you do want to open up the share settings so if I hit share, or if you hit share, this will open up, and then you can add me to the group. You can just type in Yoakum K at GTC, or you could just copy the link and then put that link in the Dropbox. But you still have to, oops, I forgot to show you, still have to give access right here. You have to give access to anyone with this link. Right now it's set to be restricted as the the default setting. Okay, so just click anyone with the link, hit copy the link, and then go into the Dropbox. Just put that in the submission text, and you're good to go. That's one way of doing it. The other way you can do it is you can download it as, go to download as Microsoft Word doc, and then you can type. So if I click that, it'll download it to my computer, open it up. It's your Word doc, and then you can type into that. But yeah, this original document that you guys have access to is not editable. It is, however, copyable or downloadable. Okay. Yeah, if you guys have questions about submissions or anything, or if Blackboard's giving you issues, you can always email as an attachment. Email me with it as an attachment. That's fine too. I don't prefer that. I do prefer the Dropbox, but I know Blackboard doesn't always work. It does for the most part, though. All right. So anyhow, we are out of the water, I think. Yep. So it could be, there's a couple specific parasites that it could be that are causing her to behave that way. So now this is it. Primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. PAM is the abbreviation for that. That relates to, and again, I this is kind of a, if you were hoping for suspense regarding what's happening with this case study, well, too bad, or plug your ears. But anyhow, yeah, they do rule out that she has some sort of parasite or amoeba. All right, hold on a second here. There we go. All right.
Can I ask what are all the different dates for?
All the different dates. Let's see.
I know these are different, like these aren't our semester dates,
but
for the purpose of the dates.
Oh, in the case study right here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's giving you the timeline of kind of what, so if we go back up to
okay,
the
so
top,
that's the time she went to the appointment or something?
Yep,
okay.
Exactly. Yep, perfect. Yep, June 15th is her first kind of, she's at the hospital. Yep.
Okay.
And yep, absolutely. And then in that same day, we're already doing some diagnostic work. And then looks like about 2 days later, yeah, not quite 48 hours later, we're back at it to do some more testing, because a couple things that they wanted to do came up negative. So she didn't step foot in a lake, so they're ruling things out with this one. Her test did reveal slightly abnormal levels of dopamine. And of course, that goes back to the beginning when we were looking at Huntington's and Parkinson's as possibilities. So hydrocephalus means water, around the brain. Certainly water around the brain can cause some major, some of what she's experiencing, these chronic headache, compression headaches, and then altering her motor skills, some behavioral stuff. So, but hydrocephalus, usually is due to a stroke or some sort of trauma, blunt trauma or something like that. So they're kind of like, well, probably not something to do with swelling on the brain. They're kind of saying that's probably not it. Demyelinating disease, maybe that just means the myelin you learned in generally in P is that insulator around the neurons. That could be specifically the axons, but that could be, like MS, GBS, or Guillain-Barré, either one of those. So now that's the direction they're going, in case you were, So anyway, and lo and behold, she's also exhibiting problems with vision. That would have been good to know at the beginning, but that's okay. So double vision, unbalanced gait. This guy pops in with Creutzfeldt-Jacobs, which is like a chronic wasting disease. So you'll research that. So now we've got 3 items that we're going to look. We just did 3, right? We did Huntington's, Parkinson's, and a potential parasite. Now, and again, there are also some nice reference links in there for Parkinson's and for Huntington's. So you can get your research done right from the case study. So that's kind of nice too, as you're looking at these. Okay. So anyway, unsteady gait. Dr. Perez is thinking
Hey, Kevin, I have a
Parkinson's.
question.
Sure, Rachel.
So when we do our case study, which I did some of it, I'm just kind of wondering, do we have to cite if we do take some information off the site?
You can, yeah. I don't need a works. I don't need a reference or works cited or anything like that. I don't need a APA format. I don't need you to go that far. But I do appreciate, especially if you find an article from a website. I definitely appreciate when students do include those because then I add it to my never-ending, ever-expanding kind of data bank of websites and that are helpful, because then down the road I may add that into one of these references. So yeah, if you find something somewhere, please include it. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you don't have to do any type of works cited or anything page. But if you at the bottom or even within the question, if you put the the website that's appreciated.
I I work with I work in a surgery department, and I actually work with a surgeon, and I did ask him about this case study, and he did some information search for me, and he actually said that measles on the brain was actually it's a possibility, being adopted out of Italy in the Western countries for the vaccine. He said it's a possibility that she could have developed it in the Western countries of Italy because of the vaccine shortage and stuff. So he did raise a good question for that too. So I actually put that in my article also.
Oh, awesome. Cool. And and that's an example, like today, like the measles is latent. Why is it 62 she all of a sudden expressing it, or it's expressing itself through her? And yeah, that could be because of a viral infection, just an innocuous virus. She could have gotten like H1N1 or just a basic flu virus, or she went down to Florida, she was on vacation, maybe some stress, flying, just exposed, so yes, something as simple as that could tip that domino, the measles domino, and start it falling. I agree wholeheartedly with that part of it. As we get to the end, that still remains a possibility in my book too, especially going with the SSBE, right?
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So yeah, the next batch is just like the previous batch, just a few different the want you to look up GBS, Creutzfeldt, and Huntington's. And then again, number 11, what do you think, right, at this point? Maybe none of the above, maybe all of the above, maybe to be determined. I don't know. So again, it's subjective for some, pretty straightforward with others. Yep. And again, you can do bullet, stuff too, with if you're listing off, signs or symptoms or whatever. And again, here's some recommended sources as well that you can use. And then June 24th. So we fast forward for about a week. Man, right? She's already had these headaches for a month and other difficulties. And now we've got her on, we've got her on the path. And here we are a week later. Now she's got blurry vision, but not double vision. So they do rule out Creutzfeldt-Jacobs. Huntington's showed her CAG. Those are amino acid groupings that we'll look at, and I think it's Unit 5. So we'll look a little bit more at that, but that's some genetic code doesn't match up with the Huntington's. So they did give her L-DOPA for that week, right? At the very beginning, I think all the way back on the 15th, they decided to administer some L-DOPA. And after a week, if, would we see, maybe wouldn't see dramatic improvement, but even a little tiny bit. But again, it depends on the dosage. There's a lot of factors, as all of you know. So they're going to do this disorder is winning, we're losing. Yep. Early. Yep. How about measles? Yeah. What about the measles? Yeah. Perform 2 tests for the presence of MS. So lumbar puncture and an MRI. So at this point, here we are. They've ruled out several items. We're at day 10 or so. Let's do an MRI. So they did that. And again, measles, just like Rachel mentioned, absolutely. She moved from Italy at the age of 2. You know, probably in the 50s, depending on when this case study was done. But yeah, shortage in Italy of vaccines. Could have been latent or dormant and then got triggered by something. Definitely. And then same with MS. Why are they thinking about MS? So again, here's a couple of resources that'll help you kind of get a little bit more info on there. So now here we are to the 25th. We're at the end, narrowing the differential diagnosis. So now she's showing extreme rigidity in her skeletal muscles. They're tense, contracted. Again, it's got to be Parkinson's, but it's not. No improvement from the L-DOPA, locomotion deficits. She wasn't doing the shuffle. That's a big one with Parkinson's. Tremors and shuffling. Those are big with Parkinson's, not just muscle rigidity. She could have ALS or the development of that, even, that probably not. But again, it's a toughie. So anyway, saying it's probably not Parkinson's. Measles in the brain, 15 years, recent illnesses, etc. Right? So we're talking about kind of her measles experience. Blood pressure readings elevated, respirations higher than normal, 28 per minute. So that is high. Normal respiration is around 12, 20 at the most. So that range 12 to 18 respirations or breaths per minute. So hers is double. She's breathing twice as fast as she should. Yeah, 20 breaths per normal. That's the high end of normal. It's 12 to 20 is the range. And again, that's different for demographics, age, gender, all kinds of physical fitness aspects. All right, so now we're looking at SSPE, Guillain-Barré. So that's where we finally end up. Your last 3 questions. So subacute sclerosing, panencephalitis, SSPE. So sclerosing has to do with lesions forming, and panencephalitis just means the entire brain is affected and is inflamed. Okay, and then Guillain-Barré, how rare? So then you're going to find the incidences of these 2, and don't just do one, do them both. And again, that you could do a bullet. You could do a bullet SSPE, a bullet Guillain-Barré, or even GBS. You could abbreviate that as well. And then at this point, what is your diagnosis, or what do you think on those 2? And again, it doesn't have to be either one of those. It could be still something atypical, something that we're still unsure. So here we go. Final diagnosis. All right. Well, I shouldn't even. If you haven't done it, then yep. Anyway, you can read that part. I've teased you enough. I've given up enough info. So you have to have some fun doing it too, right? There's got to be some element of surprise. All right, and you're welcome. My pleasure, Amanda. Okay, so again, you can just go through, and again, you can't type into this, so you're going to have to go over to File and make a copy, or File and download as a Word doc. Okay. Oh, that's the copy that I made. All right, well, let's look at Physiox. You guys ready to move on into Physiox? Oh, interesting, Lori. I didn't know that. I hadn't read that, but I there you go. There again. We're going to see a lot of this. There are a couple, I've been reading about teeth, folks who their teeth are just coming right out. No blood or anything, to just reach in and pull a tooth out. They'd had periodontal issues in the past, but their teeth were fine. They got diagnosed with COVID, like in April, asymptomatic, and then 8-9 months later, brushing their teeth, kind of a tooth falls out. Yeah, bad news. So there's a lot of oddball stuff they're fighting with those who do get infected with COVID, and again, who are asymptomatic. Another interesting one we're seeing is type 1 or juvenile diabetes is out of the blue in the last 8 or 9 months, has also skyrocketed. So there's so you could have been, or one could have been hair loss. Yep. Anosmia and taste, they said, is a big one, right? Sense of smell and taste. But yeah, they're starting to look at, there's teenagers, middle and older teens who are getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, kind of out of the blue, extreme weight loss, thirst, polydipsia, nocturia, the whole deal, right? Peeing at night, peeing all the time, drinking water constantly, losing weight. That's a big problem, right? So anyway, yeah, these folks go in and they get diagnosed, they get type 1 diabetes, and they were tested for COVID, and they tested positive, but they never had symptoms. They're asymptomatic. I've got a lamp over here, so when I get to moving my arms, if you see me flinch, I don't have, well, I probably have a lot of issues, but that's not one of them. I'm actually reaching for the lamp so it doesn't hit the floor. But anyway, yeah.
I just got my physio book today, and I haven't registered it yet, but I will,
Awesome.
Later on when we finish this. So
cool, Takesha. Good timing on that. Awesome. 3 weeks. That'll cut. So a few of you have had. I could see you talking about in the chat. Fascinating. Yeah. So smell and taste were big issues that you noticed. I've also heard of or read and seen folks with darkness, like looked almost like bruising on their feet and on their toes, and oh man. Wow. Here, case study 6 is a COVID case study. So I'll unlock module 2 this weekend. But anyhow, yeah. Yeah, inflammatory response is big. Yeah. Like I say, it's like folks are getting infected, and then something else is getting triggered. So yeah, vaccines. Some have received the 2 rounds, so that's good. All right, so Physiox. Hold on, I think somebody asked about how to submit Physiox. I think so. I'll go through that. Hold on, I got to backtrack for just a second. How to submit Physiox. Okay, good, Amanda. Yep. Well, I'll show you how to do all that. There's a drop box, by the way, everybody too, just remember there is a drop box in there's a drop box for your case studies in Blackboard. I have hyperlinks in there too. If you just go to case study assignments, it'll give you the hyperlink. In fact, I didn't hide any of those from you, so you can see the case. If you want to work ahead on case studies, they're in there. Don't do the Physiox's yet, because I haven't the directions for 4 through 12 aren't going to jive, because I was having students doing 3 activities each week, and I got in trouble. So I had to lighten the load a little. But anyway, yeah. So you guys are the beneficiaries of that. But anyway, case study, you can do multiples for extra credit. I know a few of you did submit multiples, so I'll show you how to do all that. But anyway, you can access links to drop boxes over here along the hyperlink area. You can also get to them through the modules, you know. Okay, so now how do you submit one? So let me show you how to do the Physiox, and then we'll go through how to submit one. And this is what I'm looking for, because you don't have to do a lot of extra work regarding new documents or anything. Everything you do in Physiox is right in the program itself. So I wanted to pull up. So this if you guys, those of you who have it or just received it or still waiting on it and have yet to register, once you do register, this is what you'll ultimately see. So anytime you log in, this is the screen you're going to see. Now we're going to start with exercise 3, activity 3. That's the only one we're going to do. And again, if you want to do extra, you can do as many as you want, but I'll only give you extra credit up to 10 points. So if you do 1 extra one, I'll give you 5 points. If you do 2 extra ones, I'll give you 10 points. If you do 10 extra ones, I'll give you 10 points. So the cap is at 10. So, but yeah, if you want to do as many as you want, it's certainly, they're tools that may help you along the way. Don't be restricted by just what I assign, especially as we go. There are a couple of very relevant ones later on that we'll see in cardiovascular. I'll show you all of that, Lori. Basic, yes, sort of. You have to click a button and then it will. If you stop mid Physiox, got to go walk the dog and come back in, and the computer went to sleep, you fire it back up and it's back to the login, then no, you're going to have to start it all over again. So you're going to want to do the Physiox activities more than, I'd recommend doing them in one sitting. No. Each additional one is 5 points, but you max out at 10 points. So you could look at it that way too, Jade. Though, yeah, if you do 10 extra ones, and that's just that's per unit too. So, or per exercise. So in some of them have less, like the neurophysiology are 9 activities. You're only required to do 1 for 30 points. And then as long as you've dotted all your I's, I do, there's certain things that key points that you want to answer when you're doing them. You don't just get 30 points for doing them. I deduct points for things that aren't quite correct. So, and I put comments in too. So when you have a grade when you look in your grade book, there'll be like a little talk bubble that'll have a comment bubble. Talk bubble. Anyway, it'll have a comment bubble, and that'll just have a little comment, and it may say, I left comments in your assignment. So what you'll do is go back into your assignment in Blackboard where you submitted it, and just click it, and it'll open it right up for you, and then it'll have little comment bubbles in your assignment as well. Those are comments from me for that. So if you have issues with that, nothing's due until number 3, exercise 3, activity 3 is the one that's due for this. Okay, so if you want to do an extra one, you get 5 points. If you want to do an extra 2 of them, you'll get 10 points. If you do 3 extras, you're still only going to get 10 points. I guess, I don't know if hopefully that makes sense, but anyway. Yeah, if you do 3 of them, you're going to get 10 extra credit points. So you get 3 1/3 per one you do. And that's for every unit too. So you could feasibly, there are 12 Physiox's, so you could feasibly rack up 120 extra credit points over the course of the semester, which accounts for 3 total exams. Exams are 40 points apiece. So you could get a 0 on 3 exams, 0 for 120, but you did 2 extra Physiox activities over the course of the 12 of them, and that would give you anyway, there's a lot of ways to get points, and that's one way. How do you submit the extra ones? You just submit them into the Dropbox in the same under the same unit that we're doing. So if you do any extra exercise 3 activities, you would put those in the Dropbox for exercise 3, because I set it to be unlimited attempts. So you can submit things into the Dropbox as many times as you want. And they're not due until the end of the semester. So, in March, you could say, oh, I'm going to go back in and do a couple Physiox's for extra credit. Boom, you do it, submit them in the right place. Even if you don't submit them in the right place, I'll figure it out from the grade book. So, for the Physiox account, no. If you just do, exercise 3, activity 3. So for the Physiox account, are we required to buy it? The only thing you're required to buy is the access to do the Physiox program. So, and that's $29.99 at physiox.com. So if you go to physiox.com, you'll have the ability to purchase an access code. So you can just buy access right there, and it's 29. Oops, get that out of the way. It's $29.99, and you'll have access right then and there. Or if you buy the bundle, you get the you get this, you get the book, and then you get the card. Oops, that's the back of it. You get the card inside of this package. And then, so this card is the same as this access. So basically this card is $30, but you can get instant access. If you buy this bundle, I think it's $47.99 or $67 at the bookstore. Yeah, technically you only need the $29.99 one. Yeah, absolutely. I think I sent out a Word doc. Let me see if I can find that. Here, it's right here. I'll share this in the copy link. I'll put this link in the chat. It's a document. It's kind of a how-to. Oh, the chat's already over here to everyone. There you go. Yeah, if you open that, that'll give you kind of the how-to. And yeah, you only really need the $29.99, but the book does have a lot more meat to it. But again, if you need access, you want access, go for it, get going on it, and then you can decide later whether you want the book, because you can even rent the book as an e version of the book from the bookstore. But you definitely need this. This gives you the ability to run the program and then to save it at the end and then submit it into the Dropbox. Okay, so this is what it'll look like once you've gone through the process of username setup and all of that good stuff. It'll set you up with this. Okay, and we jump around a little bit. It's the way it's set up. But yeah, neurophysiology of nerve impulses. So if I click on that, activity 3, it's going to open something that looks like this. I've got one already open, so I'm going to go back over. Okay, so it'll open something that looks like this. And at any point, you can reset the activity, start over. I don't know why you would, but you can certainly if you want. Okay, but yeah, it doesn't save it. If I walk away from here and leave and my computer times out, I've got it set, to go to sleep at a certain point, I can't guarantee that it'll be back on there. So it may kick you back into the login. So again, you want to try and get this done in one sitting. Okay, so these are the objectives. So they'll give you the objectives. So we're going to define what's an action potential, what's a nerve, axon, hillock, trigger zone, and threshold. So, these are terms we've seen a little bit before, I would assume. Certainly you've seen nerve, axon, hillock, and trigger zone. That's kind of the same spot. That's where the cell body of the neuron meets the axon. There's a little trigger zone there. So anyhow, they're synonymous in essence. And then threshold, that's the voltage or the amount of ionic exchange or ion exchange at the membrane of a neuron that's going to elicit some sort of action. So threshold is the point at which we're going to get some sort of action to happen. We're going to see an impulse continue to get conducted down an axon heading out to another neuron. So basically, how do we get nerves? How do we get sensory to go to the brain and motor to go away from the brain? Well, we need some nerves or wires that are connected, and we need to be able to send some sort of electrical impulses down, up those sensory pathways and down those motor pathways. So, but at some point, right, we need to stop, right? The need for muscle movement or the sensory aspects. We need those to kind of slow down or stop a little bit. So we can stop an action potential by altering how much ion we move into or out of the neuron. And by ions, I mean charged particles. And primarily this semester, the big ions we deal with are sodium and potassium. So we'll see others, right? We'll see calcium, especially when we get to muscles. We'll see magnesium as well. But yeah, sodium and potassium are the big ions that we're going to be working with, especially when we're dealing with getting some sort of nerve impulse to continue to propagate or to conduct or to move. So anyway, shuffling around ions to a point will alter the voltage, the electricity, the measurable voltage just inside the membrane of the neuron. So once we get that voltage to a certain point, then we hit what's called a threshold. And that's going to then send the action potential to continue down the axon. Now, if we don't get enough sodium or potassium movement or ionic exchange to alter the voltage enough to get to a threshold, then we're not going to get an action potential. So in other words, everything stops then at that neuron. We're not going to continue it. So too much potassium could trigger an action potential as well. So this Physiox takes you through that. Now, the kind of the text or the verbiage that the virtual gives you is this. Now, the book is going to have a little bit more info in it. Not a lot, but a little bit more. Again, if you can get access to the $29.99er, you're good to go. I mean, you can find more info about. I mean, this lines up with what we're doing in the Google Slides for this unit. This lines up with what's going on in OpenStax when we talk about axon, hillock, action potentials, nerve impulses, and that kind of thing. So anyway, this gives us a nice little background, and where it's highlighted, there are figures. So this is helpful, certainly. I know it's maybe been a while since some of you have seen a neuron, but we do remember that there's a cell body where the nucleus is, and then we're going to have multiple dendrites, and then typically just one axon coming off of the cell body. So impulses are transmitted from one neuron to another via this input zone where the dendrites are. So this would be like the receptive or the input zone. So each of these little dendrite arms or fingers kind of coming off of here is going to be connected to an axon of a different neuron. So when we put all of these neurons in the brain, they're going to be very densely packed. So we're not going to see very long axons. We're really just seeing neurons densely packed and little signals going from one to another. Usually has to do with thought processes, memory, listening, speaking, those types of things that your conscious brain is doing. These neurons are going to be tightly packed, very bundled. That's why when we do an MRI or even a CT scan, if we see any type of looks almost like maybe somebody took a handful of staples and just kind of threw it into an image that normally would be clear. It'd be kind of a whitish grayish color. And then if we see some black, like little lines inside of all that white matter, that can definitely be indicative of, going back to our case study, of something like MS. So some sclerotic or lesion, a group of lesions can be seen with those soft tissue diagnostics. So when we look at the spinal cord too, we've got some, they're not as densely packed certainly as the brain, the neurons. They're going to be quite a bit longer. And then but once we get out into the neurons associated with the appendages, these axons are going to be extremely long relative to what we'd see with axons in the brain or brain tissue. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So let's see. So dendrites, impulses coming in, cell body, again, where the neuron or where the nucleus is situated. And then we start to get to what we call, so anyway, this is the input zone. And then we get to kind of what we call the summation zone. So we're kind of like summing everything up. We're collecting ions basically to see if we can hit that threshold. So the summation zone is going to be right down here toward the cell body meeting the axon. This then becomes what we call the trigger zone at the axon hillock. So the hillock is where the axon, Hillock, hill with an OCK on the end, that's where the axon connects with the cell body. That's what we're looking at tonight. This experiment, this activity goes through, kind of takes this chunk of the axon right here at the hillock and then just takes a little section of it, and then we're going to set up some recorders and see what the voltage is and whether we're going to be able to transmit an impulse or propagate an impulse down the axon. So before we do that, though, again, I want to remind you that the idea is sodium at rest. We have what's called depolarization, or we're at what's called polarization is when we're at rest. So the poles, right, like the North Pole and the South Pole, we're thinking like magnets, positives and negatives. So when something's polarized, it means it's at rest. So that's what we have when there's nothing going on. There's no impulses. We're just at rest. So sodium is going to be in extremely high amounts in what we call the extracellular space. And then potassium is going to be inside or in the intracellular space. So sodium outside, potassium inside when we're at rest or when we're polarized. So when a signal comes in from we call this this is the output zone down here. So where the output zone of one axon connects with the input zone of the dendrites of a new neuron or a different neuron, that's the spot where we're going to start to see potentially the influx of sodium going inside of the cell, potassium going outside of the cell. So we're going to get a shift of these ions. As more sodium starts rushing into the cell, we're going to see the voltage start to change. Okay, so we call that depolarization. So polarized means we're at rest. We can become depolarized once sodium rushes in and potassium rushes out. At that point, we are now depolarized, and we're going to see a change in the negativity inside of the cell. Now, so sodium and potassium, by the way, are both positive ions. However, inside of the neuron, there's a lot of what we call anionic, meaning negatively charged ions that are going to be protein based. So there's going to be little bits of protein, little protein molecules that provide some structure. They provide some neurotransmitter production, some enzymatic activity, but there are some proteins inside of the neuron, in that cytoplasm of the neuron, that are going to be what are called anionic proteins. And what they do is they have a pretty good negative charge. So the inside of the cell at rest or polarization is referred to, when we look at millivolts, it's referred to as being, the number is negative 70 millivolts. So at rest, polarization, we're going to have a measurable negative 70 millivolts. And that measurement occurs just inside of the cell. So it's right inside the cell is where we measure where we're measuring the voltage. Okay. And negative 70, that doesn't mean you can't have negative voltage, right? Voltage is, so what it means though, the negative you can have negative voltage. All it means is there's more negative ions, there's more negativity at that location that we're measuring. And the location that we're measuring is just inside of the neuron. So everything we do today, everything that you hear or see in regards to PowerPoints, in regards to videos, in regards to action potentials and polarization and depolarization, and all of that relates again to sodium rushing in, potassium rushing out, being depolarized, and then starting to see that negative 70 from at rest, that negativity inside the cell. As we dump a bunch of sodium, a lot of positivity goes into the cell. That negative 70 is going to get closer to zero, right? Or closer to, it's going to become more positive. Doesn't mean it's positive yet to elicit a change. If I go from negative 70 millivolts to negative 55 millivolts, that means I've added positivity. I know it's late for algebra and math and number lines, but just think of it that way, just for a moment. Just put aside all of this, the neurons and action potential. Just think of just strict number line, negative. Think of your checkbook, maybe. Hopefully it's not in the negative, but negative 70 is worse, right, than negative 55. Negative 55 is closer to being positive. So how do you get from negative 70 to negative 55? You just add more bucks. You add more positive ions inside of the cell. That comes in the form of sodium. Go ahead. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who wants to jump in, but go ahead and jump in.
Okay, I just had a question. So in one of the questions on the physio lab, it said all or nothing. In order to get a reaction, it says that it has to cross the threshold. So my question is, so does that mean it has to be in order to get, I guess, an action out of it or cross the threshold? What does that actually mean? I mean, is that the burst of energy that you're getting, or is it something that if you touch something hot and you actually get the response of actually pulling away, or is that what it's asking?
It's sort of, it's much more micro than that. It's so tiny, but in essence, yes, what we're saying is once we get enough positive ions come in the form of sodium, once enough sodium ions go into the cell body to bring the bank account from -70 up to -55,
Right.
at that point, that's the threshold that we
Triggers a
continue
response.
the impulse. Yep, that's when the
Right.
action potential will get triggered. That's why we call this, where's my little pointer? That's why we call this axon hillock the trigger zone. It's almost like a gun. We've got this, we're kind of loading up the gun, and once we get the sum of to a certain point, then the trigger zone at the axon hillock is going to fire off an action potential, which then is also and the reason I know talking about guns, people get kind of weird, but the reason this really applies to why they call it the trigger zone, what happens when a bullet leaves a gun? It's not, you can't pull it back, right? The bullet's already, it's going to keep going. So that's why they call this the all or nothing principle. Once you hit that threshold of -55 millivolts, then you're going to get all. You're going to get the action potential, and it just keeps moving along. And as it's moving, sodium's rushing in and potassium's rushing out. So but it's going to continue this whole way, and then we start stacking up the dominoes again to be ready potentially for another action potential. So
But it has to be high enough in order to get that though, right?
correct. So if I'm at -70 inside the cell, I'm at rest. And then I get this tiny little bit of an impulse coming from the neighbor, but it's just enough to get some sodium leaching in higher levels, but it only brings me to like a -60. So it adds like $10 to the account. So I go from -70 up to -60. It's still not enough to keep the bank from calling me and saying you need to get to -55 if you want to move forward. So, but what it means in neuron talk is the impulse is done at that point. If I'm getting just a small leaching of because we have what are called leak, L-E-A-K, leak channels on the membrane. So a little bit of potassium kind of leaks out. A little bit of sodium doesn't really leak in though, but a little potassium's leaking out. Remember, potassium's also positive. So as a little bit of potassium's kind of leaking out, what you're getting here is you're staying at that negative mark. You're staying -70. As soon as I get a little tip or a little trigger here from the neighbor, that's going to cause the regular sodium channels to open up. We have what are called ligand or chemical mediated channels. So neurotransmitters would maybe trigger these channels to open. So then the sodium channels open up. But again, if it's a weak signal and you don't get enough sodium channels open, so the sodium channels respond based on the intensity of the signal coming from the neighbor. So yeah, if it's something hot and I touch something hot, I'm going to get this so the intensity of the stimulus is going to be higher at the fingertip where I touch, and that's going to trigger a really fast moving action potential from neuron to neuron to neuron. So kind of to go back to that hot, and then the motor response is the same way. The brain doesn't even have to get the signal right away that it's hot. The spinal cord, through that triple arc reflex with that interneuron, will just send a motor signal back out. So you'll pull your hand away, and then your brain's kind of like, whoa, that was hot, but you've already maybe moved your hand away. So the intensity of the stimulus is based on the intensity of the stimuli. The strength of stimulus leads to, again, how fast and how quick we need to get this impulse moving. So, but it has to stop too, right? Once we get to the muscles and we're no longer touching what's hot, then we're lining the dominoes back up. We're shutting these channels down, and now we're back to -70. We're back to being what's called polarized. So yeah, as soon as a signal comes in, depolarization occurs once we get enough sodium to go in to make the charge -55. At that point, we get at that point what are called voltage gated channels. So think of voltage, right, as and gated. The gates open based on the voltage. So once -55 is hit millivolt wise inside of that cell, it's going to trigger a whole bunch of sodium channels. They're called voltage gated channels to just open up. And at that point, you're actually going to see the -55 millivolts. The inside of that cell, that neuron, is going to jump all the way up into the +30 area. So you're going to get almost 100 increase. You're going to go from -70 to +30. That's what that threshold triggers the action potential. And that once that action potential occurs, that's when the voltage gated channels open, and then we get the actual the action potential is no longer a potential for action. It's actually happening. So yeah, this kind of goes through that very first aspect of that. So I want to get to that so you guys can kind of read through that. But yeah, we're focused primarily on threshold. This one's the information is a little bit, but again, go through and watch my YouTube videos on this stuff on module 1. Look through the PowerPoints or the Google Slides, read through the notes, and blend it all. Oh, Padlets too. There's some good info on action potentials there. You can even just YouTube threshold or action potential. So anyway, there are a lot of ways to get it to get some of this locked in. But like I say, I know it's kind of a lot of new terminology, but I will say this: throughout the semester, we deal with the nervous system, we deal with we deal with membrane transport mechanisms really throughout this whole semester. So this is, again, we're just building a foundation, introducing you to some concepts that we will see really throughout the semester. So this particular activity is fairly what I was going to say is that there's as much stuff as it kind of seems like there is with new terms and ideas. The actual process of doing this particular activity is very brief. It's a very quick activity. So anyway, I wanted so after you, oh yeah, come on. Okay, so you got the introduction. There we go. So you've got your little introduction. You can read through that, and then it's going to ask you a series of kind of pre-lab questions. Hold on a sec. That I'm going to go into the chat room. Okay, good. All right. Whew. All right. So you'll be asked, usually it's about 4 pre-lab kind of quiz questions. And again, none of the stuff you do is in here is like, should be high, like pressure. Okay. Now at the end, when you do the review questions, that's what I really focus on and want you to focus on too. In the meantime though, yeah, these pre-lab questions, what is an axon? And again, I'm not going to go through, I think, you can hit, so if I hit long, thin structures that extend from a neuronal cell body, you can check your answer and hit yes. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Which of the following is easier? It's easier to get extracellular recordings of an action potential, even though we typically have to, when we're measuring some of the basic influx of neurons, which is the first, I think, activity 1 in this Physiox nervous system Physiox. Activity 1 goes through. So if you want to for your extra credit one, I would do number 1. It's pretty straightforward and it kind of ties into this. But if I hit this, hit check answer, incorrect, it doesn't mean anything. It just gives you the correct answer and you can move on. Okay, so it's not a big deal. Action potential is initiated in an axon at or near the hillock. Yep. We also called it the trigger zone too. We didn't really say anything about the initial segment. That's the third name for it as well. But if you were given a question like this, and then you have the all the above, if two of them you definitely know are synonymous and make sense, it's got to be all the above, right? Even if you've never heard of initial segment. So anyway, it's deductive reasoning. Again, the initiation of an action potential in a sensory neuron in the body normally occurs in the dendrites. We know that's not true, right? We're talking about the axon hillock is where the initiation takes place. Requires a nerve chamber. Probably not necessarily. We don't, these happen in the brain, right? Action potentials in the brain. It doesn't, neurons don't have to be sensory neuron. Oh, it does say sensory neuron. Anyways, not all sensory neurons are in a nerve chamber. The membrane potential occurs. So the initiation occurs when the hillock reaches -70. We know that's not true because we've said it's -55. So follows a sufficiently large depolarization. So remember, when we're polarized, then we hit the threshold and we're now depolarized, and that's when everything floods in. That's what precedes the action potential. Large depolarizing event. Okay. All right, and you just hit continue, and then we actually start with the lab. So that's kind of the setup for every single Physiox activity you do. You'll get a kind of an introduction going. And again, you could have a book out, you could have another computer, you could have, however you want to do it. You could have a split screen going, a tablet, another device, to help you with some of the, if you're wondering about more regarding an action potential or some of that intro stuff. So anyway, so this is what you're going to see every single time. It'll be different depending, of course, on the activity, but it opens up with something like this. And for the most part, these are foolproof. You can't really, it won't allow you to proceed until you've done what it directs you to do. So this first one says, note that the stimulus duration is set to 0.5. Well, before we look at anything with the directions, let's look at what they have for us going on here. Looks like I've got a little worm. Well, what we have is a nerve chamber. So this is a synthetic nerve chamber, and this is going to be the hillock area up here. So this is, you can kind of see it's a little puffier right here at the top, or at this superior area, and then down here it's a little bit skinnier. So this is going to be the axon hillock kind of area here. So this is where we're going to see that this is where we're going to apply the stimulus. So hold on a sec. Couple of you have asked a question. I want to pause real quick. Okay, so where do you find which Physiox to do, or which activity to do? I thought I want to make sure. That's why I'm going back in here, because a couple of you have asked about it. But okay, so if you go into your module/unit, go to practice. There it is. Go Physiox exercise 3. If you click on that, there it is. So exercise 3, please perform activity 3, the action potential threshold. Phew, okay, so it is in there. Now let me make sure it's over here too. If I click, because remember you have this hyperlink as well that'll get you to these. So let me make sure. So then if I click that hyperlink, yeah, that's where it's going to show.
Area, I have that question for you.
Go ahead, Lori.
Before you end this area, I just have a question. So keep going, but before you move on, I have a question.
No, I think I'm done with how do you locate which ones to do or don't do. Now, and again, I do have all of them in here. If I go back to lab information tab, and you scroll down, you can see all of them are in there, but please don't work ahead yet because I haven't set. So if I click number 4, I haven't set the instructions yet. It's unavailable. So you're not even going to be able to access it. Okay. So I'll open that
So my
up.
question is,
Go ahead, Lori.
my question is that when I went through the activities and I got to the end, you know, it asks you, do you want to save it so that you get your lab report? I did save them. Of course, it asks me for my name, and then, you know, everything kind of disappears. So then I had to go back in and do a second one, and then I had to save it differently. Does it save them? Yeah, on like a report area? Because when I go back, see, it's empty.
So yeah, this
I had the
goes,
same
so
problem
it's true
too.
for all of you. So yeah, when you get to the end, you'll have all this will be filled out, right? This will have your pre-lab results, your experiment. This will have everything. Where are we? All right,
And then one of them
okay.
wouldn't let me, I answered the last question, but it didn't save it. And then when I went to the end, it said you didn't answer the last question, and I clearly did, but I couldn't, like, there was nothing else for me to do. So it ended up getting submitted to you with no answer in the last question because I couldn't get past that.
Well,
so
what kind of device are you using?
I'm on a Mac.
Oh, I have a Mac upstairs. I'll tell you what, I'll fire this up tonight on my Mac upstairs and see if it's not, it might have it be a compatibility. Rachel, you said the same thing?
I had the same trouble too. Every time I tried to save it, it wasn't saving. I actually did my exercise. I did 2-3 different exercises to see, and nothing saved. I actually had to do my exercises over and over. And then you know what? I finally submitted one, and it had a couple wrong answers on it compared to others because I was just getting very frustrated with it.
That's exactly where I was. I was super frustrated.
Do you use a Mac?
I don't really care.
Do you use a Mac too?
I do not. I'm actually on a Dell.
Well, that shoots that theory. So let me just go through what I see on my end, and you tell me if it's different on your end, or again, guys, this will all look different because it'll all be filled in, right, under normal circumstances. So if you click printable, savable version, it'll ask you to enter your name. And then it'll have this. So it's going to have your name, their date, your session ID, and then it'll have all your results. Okay. And then you click print/save as, and it should pull up your printer screen. So this would be
That's
like
where it ends for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you should you should have a destination spot. Like, where do you want to print it to? Do you want to print it to, for mine, I don't have my printer hooked up to this computer, but maybe it's not, I don't know. I guess short of you like videoing yourself or sharing your screen while you're doing it. Cause I've been doing this. This will be, oh, well, let me think. You guys, I don't know, hundreds of students, I'll put it that way, since the summer, and this is they're the first two, and it's odd that you're two in the same, and you're using different computers. I don't know. Yeah. You're the first two that that anyone's ever said that they haven't been able to get. Do we have to
print it in order to save it then?
No. You should be able to you should be able to have your destination. So maybe this is like hidden and you have to like blow your screen up or back or zoom in or zoom out. Maybe there's like a side, like, does it even pull this up or?
No, you hit the save and then it kind of just stops, nothing.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's actually Rachel, I wonder if it's a pop-up for us.
That might be it. That sounds good. Yes, I bet.
So we might have to
excellent.
Check and pop up.
Yes, check your good. Because that's what it does, right? It's a pop up. Yep, I bet you're right, man. Lori, this is why you make the big bucks.
Right, I'm going into IT after this.
That's right. Awesome. So, hey, healthcare IT is big biz, as you'd probably know.
It is actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, some colleges have a HIT program, I think HIT. But anyway, yeah, I think that's it. So you want to set your pop-up blocker to allow anything from Physiox or Pearson or whatever this is. Yep. Excellent. All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Tina.
Okay, so I was just trying to answer a question like right now on the Physiox, and it's not letting me type. Like it's not letting me type my response.
Hold on. Well, let me back up. I gotta go all the way, like into here, like in the review spots.
Yeah, like it's like question number 2 and it's not letting me type in it.
What change in, that's another new one. I've never had any. So what kind of device are you on?
A Mac. It let me type in the first one, but like not the second one. And I went to the next question to see if it just like froze or something, but it still doesn't let me type in number 2, but it does let me type in like number 3. So I don't know.
So number 2 won't let you type into, but click view experimental results and then maybe it'll, I don't know. Or just go, if it'll let you type into number 3 or number 1, just put number 2's answer in that box. You know what I mean?
I had
Yeah.
the same trouble and I had to actually exit back out and then go back in.
Oh,
Yeah, I did
if
that
that
and I
ever
had to
happens, you
start
could
it.
put, okay, well, you could put all 5 of your answers just in one box if you want. I mean, I'll figure it out when I see it. Like, yeah, if it's giving you that problem, you can put them all in there.
Okay, because it's only letting me type in number 1. Okay, just kidding. It's not letting me type anymore. So never mind. It's
That's
not letting me
wonderful.
type at all.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe. I don't know. We're burning Physiox out. They need a new server. There's your IT job, Lori, waiting for you, Pearson. All right, well, let me go back to the experiment itself, and then all that other stuff. You guys were supposed to wait to ask me all that stuff because now everybody else who's never seen this or done this, they're going to have a real negative attitude. No, I'm teasing, of course, because everybody in here's got positive attitudes all the time, right? Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, I could do my Bob Ross impersonate. I could do Physiox Bob Ross style. That might be fun. Let's see. Oh, cool, Jade. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, oh, that's always fun, isn't it? Yeah, kiddos. All right. So anyway, yeah, they're pretty much foolproof regarding running the actual experiment. So what they do is they tell you that we're set at a duration. That means how often are we getting a stimulus? So a half a millisecond. So that's undoable fast. That's extremely fast. That's how often we're getting an impulse. And then we're going to set the voltage to 10 millivolts to see if that's enough. Now, first of all, how many millivolts do we need and change to elicit threshold? Remember, we go from -70, we have to get to -55 in order for threshold to happen. So a change in voltage of 15, right? 70 to 55 is a 15 millivolt change. So predicting wise, if I give this a single stimulus of 10 millivolts, is anything going to happen? Well, I did it and nothing happened. What, by the way, too, this is where we're putting the stimulus. R1, it just happens to be the first spot that we're measuring the voltage. R2 is the second spot that we're measuring, so further down the line. So what you want to pay attention to, well, first of all, do we have enough voltage to get an impulse? No. So we're going to have to bump up the voltage. And then once we do elicit an impulse or an action potential, are we going to see the strength of that action potential? Are we going to see it diminish, get greater, or stay the same as we travel down the axon? So that's something you want to keep kind of an eye on too. So, all right. So stimulus voltage change of 10. It didn't cause anything. Remember, we need 15. Well, so they're going to have it's just going in increments of 10. So now we do 20. All right. So 20 millivolts. So we're from -70, now we're at -50. Are we going to get some sort of an action potential generated? Sure enough. So this is the action potential that was generated at R1. And this is the action potential at R2. So we see the same amount of that continuation of the action potential, the voltage change. And remember, voltage, we're measuring the influx of sodium to the cell, potassium out of the cell, and then switching it back around. We have to get repolarized to await the next stimulus. So we're at polarization here, and then we hit our threshold. So this is depolarization. So we see the voltage go up 100. Remember, we go from negative 70 to 30, positive 30. So it's a 100 voltage change elicit is what the entire action potential shows. Okay, so we have, this is basically just showing us ionic movement. So this peak that we see is the maximum amount of sodium has rushed into the cell. And so we're at the maximum amount of positivity that we can be. And then we get to that peak, and then sodium starts to leach back out. Well, we have to pump it out. We have what are called sodium potassium pumps. So we're going to pump three sodiums back out and bring two potassiums back in. So we'll look at that later, but this is what we're seeing, 100 volt change, or millivolt change. And that's at this spot, boop, boop, boop. And then we get to the next spot further down. Did the strength of the stimulus change at all? No, it's the same amplitude of the wave. So again, it's an all or nothing principle. Once we hit that threshold, we're going to continue to propagate that stimulus all the way to what we call the terminal, the axon terminal. Anyhow, let's see. Then they want us to record your data. So at 20 millivolt stimulus, we did we got our 100 volt change. So an action potential happened. So let's see. I don't know. Let's see. Why is the action potential recorded by delayed? The stimulus strength was too small. The axon is abnormally long. Action potential had to propagate, right? We had to get so we had to get from here to here before we got to R2. Okay, so now we can guess how will R1 or R2 change. Will R1 or R2 change if we increase voltage? So if I bump this up to 30, are we going to see anything happen? So I don't know. I'm just going to put no, but it's okay. So let's see. So that basically it wants us to go up to 50. So we do 30, hit the buzzer, and we see what looks like the identical as before. So just because we increased voltage, okay, again, once you get to 15, once you hit 15, everything else is irrelevant, like going above that. You can actually, with excess, you could burn out the nerve, right? With too excess amount of voltage. Oh, I must have forgot to hit record. So anyway, that's it. That's pretty much all you do with this first one. This first one is short and sweet. Just kind of gets you acclimated to running a Physiox, kind of how the basics of navigating around a Physiox. A couple of you expressed a few bumps with navigation. Totally normal. Again, you want to get your pop-up blockers unblocked and some of that other stuff. I'm not. So anyway, that's it. It'll ask you a few questions, and then you get to move on to the post-lab quiz. And again, you can answer these if you want. I would recommend it. Okay, but ultimately, the review sheet is where you're going to want to be. And again, be able to click on that and type into it, hit next. Tina, hopefully that got straightened out for you. If not, I apologize on behalf of Physiox and Pearson.
Oh, it's fine. I was just writing it down so I can type in like the comment box when I turn it in.
Okay, I was going to suggest a couple of other options. Yep. So this is, again, I obviously blips and bumps in the road. We're dealing with technology, right? So there are ways around it. So if you do have it, this is the way I prefer that all of you do it. And then again, you're going to hit printable, saveable version. Ooh, that's a tough one. Printable, savable version. And again, you want to make sure your pop-ups are in order. Thank you for that, for maybe, Lori, for discovering that, because then I can add that into my spiel at the beginning of every semester so students don't run into the problems you did. So anyway, and that from there, you should be able to save it as a PDF, hit save, and then it'll ask you where you want to save it, how you want to save it, what do you want to call it, all that good stuff. Well, I suppose if I don't think that's necessarily the goal of this. I think like looking just like tunnel vision into just knowing this one thing is going to help me save the world, or not knowing this one thing is irrelevant to my life as doing anything. I don't think that's the approach that any of you should ever take in understanding this. I think it's more or less of like we're just building our puzzle pieces and our repertoire to understand when sodium and potassium, when someone has a nervous system disorder. So as you do your case studies, you'll recognize it. Again, this is just one tiny nth of what we're going to be doing with this semester with the nervous system as a whole, but primarily with the movement of sodium and potassium, and how we can understand the diagnostic aspects of again, when someone's coming in with a neurological issue, whether it's just a localized acute issue, whether it's something that's developed chronically, maybe we can surmise and almost visualize and see what's going on with sodium and potassium levels, and why we're not getting the type of either we're getting hypo responsive, hyper responsive, completely unresponsive, whatever we're getting regarding, I mean, everything we do when it comes to trying to evaluate and assess why someone's in our exam room, why did someone come to us, is again, we're analyzing their senses. We're trying to determine what's going on with their sense of most people are here for pain, right? Most people come to you as a physician, or as, you know, and you're working in a physician because they're in pain. If you work with a specialist, they probably made it there because they were in pain and their GP sent them to the specialist. But either way, we're dealing with sensory, we're dealing with motor, we're dealing with the nervous system, and understanding how first of all, just the fact that electricity is involved and that there's a measurable amount of voltage that's going to either start an action potential and get nerves moving and working, and ultimately getting muscles to function, or getting, again, glands to secrete their hormones, whatever it might be. The nervous system is kind of the ubiquitous, everywhere, all the time system. So the movement of an impulse is entirely dependent on sodium and potassium levels, and not only that, how these channels, these protein channels in the membranes where these ions pass through, making sure that they are structurally sound, because we see issues where sodium channels, for whatever reason, have decreased and are dysfunctional. So if that's the case, I'm not ever going to get an action potential. I'm going to have hypo responsive to unresponsive types of activities. So when the goal really of this entire semester is to really start to see beyond just this is what this structure is. This is where it's located. Now we're looking more on a clinical level of the chemistry of the cells and of the tissues, and how all of them work together to really maintain that homeostatic balance that for whatever reason, puts so many people into our clinics that are out of balance. And again, it could be lifestyle, it could be exposure, it could be genetics, it could be environmental, it could be a gazillion things, but we definitely are trying to stay with simple first. We want to, just like this first case study, did we just throw her into the MRI tube at $10,000? Probably not, because she came in with some headaches. No, we want to run some labs. We want to see maybe she's got some basic sodium, potassium levels that aren't ironed out for some reason. And then we can link that as we go through the semester. We'll start to look at neurotransmitters. We're going to look at hormones. We're going to look at enzymes. We're going to look at and start to link all of these different chemicals together, and the behaviors, the responses of our body tissues when these ranges are not where they're supposed to be. And again, that's one of the first things they'll do if you go to the hospital, is they hook you up to an IV bag that's going to be full of these ions or of these electrolytes, to again get your fluids, pH, and electrolytes balance. So this is just step one of about 15 that we're going to go through throughout the semester. And again, that we spend a good couple of weeks just talking specifically about fluid balance, pH balance, electrolyte balance. It just it'll tidy up all of this initial stuff. So yeah, so stay in here. Don't get too out here when it comes to there it goes again. When it comes to why is this relevant, or when am I ever going to need this, or what does this have to do with anything outside of me trying to make the grade or pass the exam? It has nothing to do with that. This is the fundamentals and most basics of where we're going next with neurotransmission to get a gland to release the right types of hormones, with getting our muscles, our skeletal muscles first. How do we get those to function properly? Everything goes back to the nervous system, goes back to action potentials, propagating those action potentials, and ensuring that polarization to depolarization back to repolarization, which simply just means sodium and potassium balance outside and inside the neurons and inside of all of your cells is in order. So really, that's kind of the goal. And again, I know it comes up. The beauty of having you, Craig, in a class like this.
I didn't mean to trigger you that much, man.
No, listen, is that you think it and then you say it, whereas many students are feeling and thinking that same thing, right? I thought it all the time as a student. What the hell am I going to use this
out of
for?
place, man.
Right? It's like, when am I going to use quadratic, the quadratic formula for anything? But what it does is it just gets you critically thinking a little bit more and adds things, together. But yeah,
like for instance, at an accident, am I going to tell like some dude who's like half dying, like your neurons are not right?
Well, hopefully
the
not,
axons and axon potentials.
that's not. I don't think that's
They're
the
just
goal
not fitting
of
into place type
That's
of deal.
correct. Yeah, there's time and place to be discussing things with patients, and usually when they're dying, discussing what you know from physiology, not a good idea.
Tell them your neurons are kind of screwing up,
they're
right?
not firing. Now, if they're not right
Not
in other
firing
ways, and
not
remember,
firing bullets.
we are not here to do much of, we relay what the physician tells us to relay to the patient. The patient tells us things, we relay them to the physician, we take notes. We're not in the business of trying to go over anybody's head or try to explain things to patients that don't really matter to them per se, but when it comes down to you being able to understand it from you're talking on the doctor level, you need to be able to convert what they're telling you to tell the patient into what they call, lay people's terms. I probably can't say layman's terms anymore. Lay women's terms, lay people terms, I don't know, but the lay terms we'll say, right? I mean, that's really the goal, because most of your patients have never even, they can't spell anatomy, let alone physiology. They've never heard of it. They never took it. And you're not going to get technical. You're not going to get into any kind of, this is this and that. You want to keep it very basic, but you do want to be able to explain to them what's going on and when it's
A
called
nurse
for.
has to explain what an axon potential is to a
Probably
patient.
not. No, but you do need to know
You have to converse that with who?
you may be
God?
talking with your physicians about that. You just don't know.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Why, especially if you work in anything to deal with neurology or pain management or musculoskeletal orthopedics. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that a lot of the stuff we're doing and why
The
we're
axon
treating patients
potential
is,
just bummed out
yep,
or
yep.
something like that.
It goes back to the chemistry of the action potential is just the term we
And a
give
nurse
to
has to
sodium and
converse that with a
potassium
doctor.
levels. You may well have to be
This
able to
is,
understand what sodium and potassium are.
I
So,
know that. Come
well,
on.
that's it. Put the brakes on the action potential, because if you can understand sodium and potassium and the importance of those and how they relate to an action potential, when the physician is discussing, or when you don't even have to discuss, when you're looking at patient charts and you see why they're
Doctor.
there and you're part of that team to resolve what's going on.
But that's like really higher up though.
Well, you're not the only you're
That's really higher up,
all
dude.
of you
That's
have different aspirations and different goals and a different path, and you just don't know where your path may lead one day. Your path may lead to being in front of a big conference full of doctors, giving some sort of presentation on the importance of acetylcholinesterase and action potential propagation. You never know. So,
that
and
was you.
furthermore, there are 108 of you this semester, and you never know, out of that 108 we may have multiples who decide that this information is something that they'll go further with and do something with. So I'm going to move on into the next step, which is
Sorry, master.
you never have to apologize, but what I appreciate again is candor. I want all of you to know that if you have concerns about like, what's the point of this, first of all, just trust the process. You need to know this to build on processes that you're going to see not only this semester, but when you get to pharmacology, if you have a good solid understanding of the basics of physiology, pharmacology is a slam dunk class. But if you so anyway, just keep your mind open to, again, just follow the process, understand the basics of the terminology, and again, you'll see where it goes as the semester travels, and you just don't know where your lives are going to take you. So having said that, are there any other questions about Physiox or about, and again, this is just basic physiology. It's your first little taste of talking about ions, talking about movement, talking about action potentials and thresholds and where we need to be. I mean, a lot of you can go to Walgreens now and get eStim. A lot of your eStim units have to do with voltage, and if you don't understand, I mean, so you will potentially have to be discussing voltage with your patients, depending on what type of environment that you work in. And again, some of you do work already in pain management or orthopedics, and you know that that's a common vocabulary. Yeah. So, but yeah, you will not be discussing those specifics. The idea is not to be discussing specific physiological principles at work, unless you're working in an environment that promotes that. But you're doing the very basics. Your job as a nurse is pretty much talking about drugs. You guys are you're pushers, basically. You're the middleman. So that's pretty much what you're up to. So pay attention to this stuff. Then pharmacology makes a lot more sense. Then when you're talking to your patients about drugs and drug interactions and contraindications and all of that, that's when the real stuff comes into play. Right, Takesha? Yeah. You'll never hear you might hear the word action.
Yes.
And you might hear the
I'm
word,
sorry, yes.
you might hear the word potential, but you won't hear them together. That's exactly
No,
right.
action potential. No, your doctor might even look at you and be like, what the hell is an action potential? Because it's so.
Hey, and that's awesome you said that, because that's the other thing I was going to mention to all of you too, is that as you guys walk out of this class and you walk out of Gateway as a whole with your education that you're getting here, you know things and you'll remember things about the human body and physiology that many of the physicians you work with have forgotten about. Action potential is probably one of them. So you do have one up on them there in some ways. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Yep. Doctors, they admittedly have forgotten a lot of A and P. They know their drugs though. That's for sure. In fact, if you look at a medical school curriculum, the pie chart, about 75% of that pie is organic chemistry and pharmacology. So that's it, right? We have to know, and pharmacology is based on physiology. So this, what we're doing in here is just, like I say, it's groundwork foundation for what's to come. So yeah, hang in there. You guys have any other questions before I wrap it up? And again, yeah, I enjoy our times together. I appreciate all of you that come. I think we're up to about 25 or so at one point tonight. A few have left, a few have joined. So thanks again for coming. And I hope you do choose to come every week. Now we're going to be, those of you who are in my Elkhorn group, I sent out an announcement with a little kind of a diagram. We're going to be on campus minimally 5 dates this semester, doing a couple wet labs as well. We'll do our Physiox stuff those nights too. But those of you others, I'll be recording those sessions, so you'll be able to see what's going on. But it'll be a different backdrop a couple of times, at least 5 times a semester. I think 2 weeks from tonight, February 10th, I'm going to be at the Elkhorn campus, so I'll be recording live from there. So anyway, we're going to be doing some cell transport stuff and some other basics, which again, the cell transport mechanisms, osmosis, diffusion, active transport, your physicians, your patients, nobody's going to know what that stuff means, but you are, and you're going to take that knowledge forward. So when you're looking at what's going on with these pharmacology, with this pharmaceutical or these pharmaceuticals and why this patient's behaving the way they are, you can see and kind of be able to understand what's going on, if you want to. If you're just here because you have to be here, then I'll do my best to at least make it entertaining. So let's see. Where will those links be? I don't know what links. All the links are going to be in under modules units. You're going to find links under Padlet to get to all the Padlets. But the Padlet link, the web links, there's a bunch of different links in there as well. And again, when you're ready to do the Dropbox for any of these, you can go to these hyperlinks over on the side, and that'll take you right into the Dropbox. Oh, lastly, so yeah, Physiox is giving you issues. I got sidetracked. Physiox is giving you issues, okay? Typing and whatnot. I'll go through, I'll create a file that's going to just have the questions. It'll be as a Google Doc. So I might even have, let me see, Physiox 3 nervous. I can do that. I'll put I'll make a Google Doc file or a Google file with all the Physiox, just the questions, in case it gives you trouble. Does that sound good? Oh, live lab recording links. I haven't done those yet. So I will, that'll be February 10th. And it'll be just like this. It'll be set up the same way. I'll be Zooming live. Yeah. Oh, the link will be the same. Yeah. To get into the, yeah, if we're ever Zooming, it's always the same link. When I'm on campus, it'll be the same link. I think, does that answer your question, Liz? All right. Well, that's all I have, guys. So I'll see you next Wednesday. And again, if you need